So good morning, everybody. First of all, we would like to thank the organizers of this conference, Licia Romano and Franco D'Agostino, Holly Pittman and Reed Goodman, who look as one would look at 4 o'clock in the morning. So, but I appreciate that you are with us. Mark Lebeau and Cameron Patry for bringing specialists of various disciplines together in this conference in order to advance our understanding of the most crucial aspect of Mesopotamia, that is the relation to water and the sea. And I have to admit, I learned already a lot in the past 2 days. In this paper, Berthold Einwag, Jörg Fassbinder, and I will present some new ideas about enigmatic features at Fara, Shuruppak, and at Ur, which were related to water, in our opinion, but we are looking forward for your comments or critics in the end. Fara Shuruppak is best known from the ED3A period, which was labeled the Fara period due to the about 1,000 cuneiform tablets discovered in the earlier excavations, which are the first good source for the history of Sumer. And in the ED3A period, in the Fara period, Fara was one of the major Sumerian cities. It was member of the Kiengi City League, including the most important sites in central Mesopotamia. And it was apparently situated at the main Euphrates branch, which led from Nippur over Shuruppak to Uruk. And this Euphrates branch has always been, as we know from the texts, one of the most important waterways for economic, religious, and political issues. So today, Fara is very remote and far away from any current water. Even very few canals are in the immediate surrounding, so it's a very dry area. But the remains of this main Euphrates branch of the 3rd millennium and 4th millennium BC is still visible on the surface. We marked it here in red arrows, so it passes by Fara on the west and it goes further on in the direction to Uruk. And this waterway is flanked by a number of Uruk and early dynastic sites, but no latter sites. So the settlement history of Fara, it was a flourishing town from the Jemdet Nasser to the ED3A period. Then after 2500 BC, there's a certain decline, but there's again a relevant Ur3 occupation from 2100 to 2000. And it doesn't stop immediately, but there are some traces of Isin Lhasa occupation. So it seems to have been abandoned around 1800 BC, but then for good. There was no later occupation whatsoever. So earlier excavations were conducted by Robert Koldewey and Walter Andrä from the Deutsche Orientgesellschaft from June 1902 to March 1903 without interruptions in the Mesopotamian summer. So they were quite the tough early generation of archaeologists. And then Erich Schmidt directed renewed excavations from February to May 1931. And finally, all these results were published and brought together by Harriet Martin, who did a surface survey in 1973 and who wrote this major book, her thesis about Fara in 1988. The method of investigation were 21 very long systematic trenches. At that time, the best method to investigate a settlement. Fara Shuruppak today is a site, a very, very large site. So if you have to walk there, you are really exhausted in the evening. From about 220 to 250 hectares, situated in the middle of the steppe. And since it was so far away from any village or human settlement, it was very difficult to protect it after the Second World Gulf War. So what we see today is a completely destroyed site. So all these pits are looting holes. It's really a nightmare what has been done to this ruin. But you see also in the background it's just dry, very dry. So to figure out the kind and amount of destruction, we started a new survey project in 2016. In fact, it was an Iraqi-German team directed by Abbas al-Husseini, Jakub Jaudat, Berthold Einwag, and myself. So today, really not a soul except for a few sheep and camel would come by Fara. So it's a very large mound, which, however, is not higher than 10 meters, even in the highest point. It is difficult to imagine today in this dry area that Shuruppak was always been related in literature with the flood, so apparently with very heavy inundations. The Sumerian king lists names it as the last dynasty before the flood. The Akkadian Gilgamesh epos and the Sumerian Atrahasis epos mention it as the city where the famous ship or ark was built, a story which lives on in Genesis 6-9. And indeed, of course, the excavators were looking for archaeological proofs of this flood, and of course they found it. There's a thick inundation layer already found by Andre, and also the excavations by Smith found sterile inundation layers above the Jemdet Dasa levels. So it's still the question if this is a pure mythos or if it's a reflection of periodical inundation or of one very large inundation. But however this is, we can be certain that Shuruppak was situated in an especially watery environment. So, sorry. When Walter Andre worked here, he made a journey on horseback in 1903 and wrote a report in MDOG 1902 with this map, which is very interesting. And if we zoom into this map, you see the environment of Fara in 1903. So you see, sorry, I have to get to the laser pointer. You see Fara here was only distant about 2 kilometers from where he marks the Hor, the marshes. So there are other marshes to the east and marshes to the south and to the north. The immediate surrounding at that time was also bushlands or fields, and then the steppe began. There were massive remains of partially running, partially dried out waterways in the northwest and in the southeast, and here also the remains of some waterways. So I find it very interesting that until 1903, really the marshes were very, very close by Fara, which is incredible today. Of course, we have more attestation for waterways or the watery environment of Shuruppak as well in the depictions. We have this votive plug and cylinder seals, which show ritual boat journeys of gods. And we have men depicted standing in their boats and hunting wild boar in the marshes. So this is a typical Fara period sealing. And we have also terracotta ur-boat models, probably dating to the Ur-3 period. The Fara texts are also explicit. They mention travels by boats. They mention many fish and birds. And most interesting, there is named a Luma Erikas, which is translated by Gebhard Sels as the seamen or sailors of the trading quarter or harbor. So they are an issue also in these texts. Other remains of the watery environment are these hundreds of terracotta rings lying everywhere on the surface of Fara, most probably fishnet sinker, as you see from this parallel from Khafaji, the temple of Al. Indeed, it was watery when we went there for the survey in February 2008, and we wished we had a boat to get there, which would have been much more comfortable than our cars, and we nearly didn't get it to the site. Now I will hand over to Berthold Einwag, who will tell us more about our recent research.
The digital elevation model shows 4 areas which we have chosen for magnetometer prospection, and I will refer to 2 of them, one in the east and one in the west. Jörg Fassbinder conducted this prospection with his team in 2018, and in his talk on the first day he has already spoken about the method and his instruments. We will have a closer look on 2 areas. The first is an area in the east. It measures 360 by 80 meters, and it shows the so far unknown remains of a city wall of Fara, consisting of a casemate wall 7 meters wide and a broad waterway outside this city wall, and there's another narrow waterway in the west cutting off this area named Mount B from the main mount of Fara. The second area I want to refer to is in the west. Here located. It is a straight structure, and Andre mentions it as 80, already Andre mentioned it at 80 meter long and 50 meter wide, and consisting of baked bricks. What could this enigmatic structure be? The magnetometer measurement shows a straight structure, 150 meters long and 15 meters wide, and next to it a basin which is 138 meters long and 24 meters wide. The magnetometry together with the aerial photos shows that there is an attached structure which is continuing. It is 9 meter wide. In the interpretation of this feature, it turns out to be a baked brick wall next to a basin attached to a canal. It seems to be a dock of a harbor connected by a 9 meter wide canal to 2 waterways. This is how we interpret Shuruppak in its natural settings. It was situated on the Euphrates and seems to have been surrounded by canals. A canal was separating the main mount from in the west, the main mount B from the central mount, and in the west there was an harbor. Let us follow now the Euphrates downstream to the city of the moon god Nana, Tel al-Muqayyar Ur. It was a major city for 5 millenniums, situated at the Euphrates near the sea. Harbors and waterways led to its role as wealthy international trade center. Excavations were conducted by Leonard Woolley from 1922 to 35, and renewed research was undertaken 2015 until 2019 by Elizabeth Stone, Stony Brook, and Abdel Amir Hamdani, who gave yesterday a fascinating talk about the marshes. We were allowed to participate, and we are extremely grateful to Professor Stone and Dr. Al-Hamdani. Watercourses were studied in 2012 and 2017 to 2019. The drone photo over the south mount of the city shows the city wall and the surrounding waterway, and in the background left the famous ziggurat. The Magnetometer prospection 2017 and 2019 in the south mount show it covered with a lot of buildings and the city wall and a waterway outside the city wall. I want to draw the attention to a strange structure here in the south. The structure lies outside the city wall, and it consists of a cluster of two clusters of 4 highly magnetic signals, here in colored and here in black and white. They might come from a set of 2 similar pillars from baked, a set of 2 similar pillars consisting of 4 pillars of baked brick. Each block has 4 pillars originally, approximately 18 meters by 14 meters wide in a distance of 17 meters. And these are situated in a water situation. The water must have affected the pillars and spread the baked bricks over a larger area. This lets one think about a water crossing construction, a bridge. As an example, I want to mention the famous bridge of Babylon, excavated in 1910 and 11 and mentioned by Herodot. He describes it as consisting of solid pillars and wooden planks, which were removed by the night. Our conclusion is that a bridge of baked bricks and bitumen gave access to the city across a broad waterway. Now Jörg Fassbinder will continue with further observations. Jörg, it's your turn.
Sorry, I cannot go on with the presentation. But so
yeah, I go with the presentation.
Okay, okay. Let's. Yeah, I just want to add some issues about ERT measurements. We measured in the eastern part, northeastern part. The next slide, we measured parts of a harbor, as we say, and we covered it partly in the image on the right side. You see the outline, which is drawn from the air photo. But we saw very similar constructions in the southwestern part, constructions of a harbor, which we re-measured with the ERT. And this is what we are missing. You see the profiles of ERT we covered here This is a work from Mandana Pasi, one of our students. She is especially in charge with these ERT, earth resistivity measurements, which allow us to get an insight into the deeper parts of the ground. And there we may measure 2 profiles across the harbor. And if you show the next slide, yeah, here you see one of these profiles. You see very clearly the wall or the dam of the harbor on the left side, which is probably from bricks compressed. And then you see the base of the harbor. And here we were astonished that we found at least 4 to 5 meters deep sediments, which clearly indicate the resedimentation of this basin of the harbor. So this is what we are missing in Uruk example. We hadn't such a measurements there, but we should continue with it. And it was, at that time, it was a challenge to use these ERT measurements, because so far we never applied it in this environment, and we would not expect such results. So, but this is a geophysical method which needs further verification and further measurements on these areas. So the question, why they need such a deep harbor? It is not said that it must be like, it shows simply the sedimentations in it. So probably they clean it and and furthermore it was filled up with sediments again. So this is the situation now. I think, yeah, we made some further results to test our ERT instrument against evaporation. That is showing the data here that we are not very much affected on this evaporation, so that the ERT must not be, doesn't require further recalculation on it. That's just additional measurements, very specific for geophysicists, to underline that these measurements were reliable in the ERT. Yeah, just a short explanation why and what is the need to use it, the ERT. So we understand, meanwhile, it's one of the most promising instruments to reveal, to get information from deeper parts of the underground, since mainly the radar will not work in such a depth. It will be damped, the radar waves will be damped by this high content of salt and clay minerals also, which are very much against radar prospecting. But here we get clearly features by this method, and this is a really promising method to do some further research on harbors and canals. Yeah, that's
so. That's the end of our talk, and we are looking forward for comments and discussion.